At the dawn of the millennium, the earth was weary and the sky was heavy with smoke. The dusty roads of the Levant groaned under the weight of Roman iron sandals. Whenever the standards bearing the golden eagle appeared on the horizon, cities fell silent and hope flickered out. The tyranny of Rome had cast a shadow over Jerusalem, like a dark shroud. Men became strangers in their own lands, slaves in their own homes. The crack of tax collectors' whips, the desperate cries rising from the marketplaces. The burden on the people's backs had become unbearable. Every morning at sunrise, weathered eyes turned toward the heavens. A single prayer, a single plea lingered on their lips. Where is he? Where is the Savior promised by the Holy Scriptures, the one who will break these chains? The great Messiah, foretold by prophets centuries ago, was expected. Some imagined him as a conqueror on a white horse with a sword in hand. Others imagined him as a storm that would level the palaces of Rome. But the heavens remained silent, and the prophecies stayed hidden between the pages of dusty parchments. Yet far from the magnificent palaces, in a forgotten, quiet village of Galilee called Nazareth, salvation was beginning to sprout. While everyone's eyes were on the sky, the miracle was on the earth. No one realized it, but that great light was growing in the humble house of Nazareth, in the hands of a carpenter. These were the silent years. While the world loudly awaited a king, that king was quietly preparing, with the curiosity of a child, the patience of a youth, and the sorrow of a man. Among the stone houses of Nazareth shining under the sun stood a small shop. Inside, it smelled of fresh cedar and olive oil. Young Jesus worked throughout the day beside his father, Joseph, his back bent with labor. Everyone knew him only as the carpenter's son. The calluses on his hands and the beads of sweat on his brow were ordinary. But in the dim light of that workshop, every stroke of the chisel Jesus made was shaping not just wood, but a soul. Joseph would sometimes pause while watching his son. When Jesus touched a log of wood, it was as if he felt the water in its roots and the wind in its branches. While his father taught him how to straighten the crookedness of the wood, Jesus looked out the window at the world, at the poor peasants harassed by Roman soldiers. This sorrow grew like a fire burning from within. As he saw how people writhed in the clutches of injustice, he felt an indescribable ache in his heart. In those moments, the wood in his hand grew heavy, and the walls of the workshop seemed to close in on him. Once in the marketplace, he locked eyes with an old man being mistreated for being unable to pay his taxes. That look was the purest form of despair. When Jesus returned home, he could not sleep all night. Mary, looking into her son's eyes shining in the dark, saw his immense compassion that embraced the world, and she was afraid. For that compassion was too heavy for an ordinary man to carry. With so much pain, how can I only make a door? With so many broken hearts, how can I only repair a table? As evening fell in Nazareth, two silhouettes would appear in the flickering light of a small lamp in the courtyard. Mary would watch her son out of the corner of her eye. Jesus, was not just a son. Mary carried the weight of that tremendous news she had received years ago, like a secret in her heart. But a mother's heart only wanted her son to be safe, to build a home like other young men, and to go to his shop in peace every morning. However, Jesus' silence at the table told Mary more than 1,000 words. Even while breaking his bread, his mind was in other realms. As Mary saw the sorrowful light in her son's eyes, she sensed that the great day was approaching. The heaviest burden for a mother is to know that her child does not belong to this world. Jesus would sometimes place his hand on his mother's shoulder. They would not say a single word. In that touch, there was both a farewell and a silent consolation, saying, "Do not be afraid, mother. Everything is as it should be." Jesus' compassion knew no bounds. While bandaging the wound of a stray dog or taking a bowl of food to a wronged widow, Mary saw the prophecies slowly taking flesh and bone. While the people expected a king, Mary secretly feared a sacrifice. Because Jesus knew this anxiety of his mother, he showed his love for her through the fresh water he brought to the table every evening, by sweeping the courtyard, and by keeping the shop left by his father alive. As time settled over Nazareth like a cloud of dust, the hammering sounds that had echoed in that small shop for years suddenly went silent. Joseph, Jesus' earthly guide, protector, and master, had delivered his trust. When death visited that humble home, not just a father had gone. The last bond to Jesus' childhood and the safe silence of that shop was broken. When Jesus looked at his father's lifeless hands, he thought of how those hands had shielded him for years. Now, he was alone at the carpenter's bench. A half-finished plow in the corner of the shop stood as Joseph's last memory. Jesus finished that plow, cleaned the tools one by one, and put them away. But now when he entered that shop, he smelled not just cedar, but the scent of the immense solitude that was approaching. Nights were now longer, and the mountains felt closer. Jesus worked in the shop all day, but when the sun set, he surrendered himself to the hills, to the shadow of the olive trees. There, kneeling alone under the stars, he mourned not just for his father Joseph, but for all of humanity crushed under injustice and darkened in spirit. On one side was the peaceful silence in the shop, on the other, a whole world crying out. That unquenchable fire within him was now pushing him out of Nazareth, toward the vast wilderness. And one morning, the sun over Nazareth rose differently than ever before. While the sounds of roosters broke the village's silence, Jesus stood one last time at the dusty threshold of the carpenter's shop. He looked at the shop he had created with his hands, where he had given shape to wood and earned his living. His chisel on the bench, his father's hammer, the familiar scent of cedar that had permeated every corner. All of it was now in the past. At the door, Mary was waiting. They did not speak a single word. When Mary saw the unquenchable light in her son's eyes, she set aside her motherly fear and simply bowed her head. This was a mother's most difficult, yet most sacred approval in the world. Jesus threw his cloak over his shoulder and took his staff in his hand. Behind him, He was leaving not just carved wood, but his childhood, his memories, and his safe harbor. When he passed the end of the street, no one turned to look. His neighbors still thought he was the son of Joseph the carpenter. Yet with every step, he was moving a little further from this world, and a little closer to the destiny of heaven and humanity. As the dust under his feet rose, the storm that the silent years had gathered within him finally subsided. It was replaced by a boundless peace and an unshakable will. The hills of Nazareth were now left behind. Before him, under the scorching sun, lay the road to Jordan. That road was the path of pain, mercy, and the great encounter that would change the course of history. The world did not yet know, but the expected savior, wearing a carpenter's dusty cloak, was coming quietly and alone